Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Pam Bondi fires back at the disgraceful Madeleine Dean, who is showing the worst version of Trump derangement syndrome I think I've ever seen. Let's dive in.
The three hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are two types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
The answer is yes. No,
hold
excuse
on.
me.
No,
No.
for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
Yes or
for the
no?
World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that
Excuse
said
me.
Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman.
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
This is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden, very strange and very unprofessional of you. The answer is yes or no, and the answer is yes. You were registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. Is that correct? Yes. Never mind, don't answer. Did you disclose that when you went before for the Senate for confirmation? Yes or no? No, it was not in your documents. The answer is no. President Trump.
This was discussed at my confirmation hearings in detail.
It was discussed, but you failed to bring up the conflict that you had. President Trump recently announced he'd accept that $400 million Qatar airplane because it was just prettier than the one he was flying around in. Is it true that you gave advice that this was legally permissible? Yes or no?
I will not discuss any advice that my Office of Legal Counsel gives to the President of the United States on any matter.
When you spoke before the Senate, you said you would ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from that issue?
And talking about unprofessional, you say the President wanted a jet because it's pretty?
Excuse
Come
me.
on, this is a Senate, this is a
He said it
congressional
himself.
hearing.
He said it himself. Let me go to April the 2nd. You're a part of this, the president has dabbled in meme coin. He had the DOJ disband the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. His son recently launched the Executive Branch Club, a private club with $500,000 memberships here in D.C. Any of this seem like it might be a problem, might be profiteering from the office, and maybe you and your ethics team might be concerned about these conflicts of interest, your own and the president and his family? Yes or no? Any concerns?
What I would be concerned about in Pennsylvania are all the child sex cases that we've prosecuted, all the CSAM cases that we've prosecuted.
Did you hear
in
my question?
Pennsylvania.
I
That's
asked
what
the
I would
witness
be
to
concerned
actually
about.
answer questions that are asked.
Congresswoman Dean.
Chairman,
Please let the witness answer the question.
she didn't. And I would like to ask you one more question. You're not just complicit in this, you're actively helping and profiting. Isn't it true that on April the 2nd, the same day that Trump announced his chaotic tariff regime that plummeted the stock market, you sold more than $1 million worth of your shares in Trump Media stock? Trump Media stock fell 13% in the following days. Seems you avoided that loss. Well done. I yield back.
May I answer that, Chairman? I complied with my ethics, and yeah, I would take a class in financial literacy if you think I profited from that, because I lost a tremendous amount of money. Congresswoman, and also on page 25 of my SJ2, it lists my involvement with Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Thank you.
Did you catch that? Did you catch the Trump derangement syndrome there? Because it was subtle. It was only there for a few seconds. And if you did, just tell me where it was in the comments below. But now I'm going to tell you where it was. All right. So it happened just about a minute and a half into the video after already trying to start an insult war with Pam Bondi. Yeah, you want to talk about professional there? I don't think so, Madeleine. But Trump derangement syndrome rears its ugly head yet again because Donald Trump wasn't even brought up in this idea. Pam Bondi was being called out for daring to work on, checking notes here, potential human trafficking in Qatar. Yeah, I don't think that's the bad thing you think it is, Madeleine, but okay, bold strategy. Let's see if it works out for her. Short news, it really didn't. But to make matters worse for the Trump derangement syndrome, she brought up the fact that Qatar decided to gift the Trump administration and future presidents, might I add, a new plane for the Air Force One fleet. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that little nation, and by the way, if you're called a Qatar, that means you're throwing a fastball that's moving across the plate. Used to be able to throw that. Ugh. I couldn't make it in the big leagues, though, that's for sure. So that's not the insult that you really think it is, Madeleine, and then it's not even the right way to go across this sort of little debate here. Okay, the best way for you to deal with this is actually her ending point. The best point that she had is talking about the weird happenings that happen when certain people have their stocks sold on a day that tariffs are announced. Now, granted, not all politicians are allowed to own their own stocks. And in the case of Pam Bondi, she actually is. This isn't a Jennifer Granholm situation, by the way. It was discovered back in April that right when Trump made an announcement about tariffs, Pam Bondi sold off a handful of her stocks. Granted, she actually lost a ton of money when she did that. But what ended up happening was sort of the opposite of the Jennifer Granholm version here. And that is Jennifer Granholm, under the Biden administration, was tapped, I believe, for the Department of Energy. And she forgot to disclose a couple of stocks. They were apparently locked away, and her own accountants lost them as well. So it turned out to be user error, and once they found out, she immediately reported them and tried to be as honest as possible. And I actually appreciate that about her, but come on. You got to take a financial literacy class if you're going to be that dumb, all right? So Pam Bondi is actually allowed to sell off certain stocks, and here's the reality. These officials can technically engage in stock trading during their tenure in the federal government. But they can face criminal penalties for doing so if they work on a matter involving the companies in which they hold those stocks. So, if Pam Bondi, for instance, had, let's say Facebook stock, and then if she ended up looking into Facebook, but she actually owns MySpace stock. That is a bit of a conflict of interest since those organizations are in direct competition. In this case, she was holding certain stocks, I believe, in association with President Trump. Again, a second part of the Trump derangement syndrome. How dare she invest in people she agrees with, you know? What a terrible thing that is to do. And it can it can get to a point where it doesn't fully pass the smell test. That does sound a little bit under the table, but the reality is, if you're not stealing money from the federal government, if you're not magically funneling money from an organization that you voted to give more money, like, for instance, say, USAID, then the American people don't really seem to care because that doesn't smell like corruption. That just smells like someone making a very dumb business decision. And that's what happened with Pam Bondi here. And Madeleine Dean is out here whining about it on two different levels of Trump derangement syndrome. And it's the worst kind, because it's not necessary for this hearing. They're here to talk about what happens under the new potential budget that's going on. This is all under the argument and auspices of the big, beautiful bill. And instead of arguing from those, Madeleine Dean is going after Pam Bondi because she briefly worked for Qatar. She is a part of the Trump administration, and she sold stocks. This has nothing to do with her purview as the Attorney General of the United States. It simply doesn't. It is ultimately this weird tactic that often people will use in politics. Both sides will do this. But they'll whine, complain, and moan about something that has nothing to do with the actual subject matter, and then try to campaign and raise money off of it. And Madeleine Dean is she's from Pennsylvania, which is now officially a swing state. It used to be a part of the blue wall. It is no longer. And of course, she's going to keep a closer eye on the polling in order to ensure that she stays in her position. But Scott Pressler might have something to say about that if he gets his way in Pennsylvania. By the way, big shout out to him for helping to deliver that state for President Trump. But I think it's very odd that Madeleine Dean seems to have no concept of what is actually happening and what is legal and illegal when it comes to the Attorney General's office. One of the most important jobs that Congress has is to write laws with the intent of making sure our federal government works. You'd think that someone who has been in that office for over 10 years now would know a little bit more, and particularly a former lawyer. I thought I smelled out a lawyer's argument when she was grilling Bondi, and it turns out I was right. She has been a lawyer for quite a long time. But you'd think that she'd be better at making an argument than what we just saw here today. Maybe she would, but when you have Trump derangement syndrome, the rest of your world is going to look very, very odd. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.